Women raise their voices in Latin America for equal rights as the world celebrates International Women's Day. Ecuador's government extended the state of emergency for another 30 days, a measure in place since January 8th to allegedly combat organized crime. As Israel murders an average of 63 women daily in Gaza, the Palestinian Prime Minister assured that on International Women's Day, women in his country have had to live through the darkest days in history. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean commemorate International Women's Day by raising their voices for equal rights. Women from several countries in the region will honor the courage, strength and achievements of women around the world in the face of the challenges of inequality in public and private sectors. In this sense, thousands of activists will carry out activities such as forums, marches and rallies during this day. On the other hand, the date reminds the world of women's struggle for equality, recognition and the effective exercise of their rights. Across different countries, women fight for the struggles of their people, demanding a more just world amid an increasing world crisis. In Argentina, the traditional March 8th demonstration took place, despite the confirmation by the government that public workers who adhere to the strike will not receive the day's salary. Manuel Adorni, spokesman for President Javier Milei, was in charge of communicating the decision. As every March 8th, Argentine women are preparing for a great day of mobilizations. However, in view of the onslaught undertaken by the executive against the feminist movement, this day takes on special relevance. Despite the threats that target an already impoverished sector, big demonstrations are expected all over the country from a movement that had been on the forefront of women's struggle in the continent and is now severely targeted by the national government. With a commitment to revitalize the functioning of the organization, the 11th Congress of the Women's Federation began this Thursday in Cuba. Nearly 323 women delegates gathered at the Convention Palace in Havana, the capital of the island, to discuss the current challenges facing the country. Teresa Marelle Boué, member of the Political Bureau and Secretary General of the Federation, explained that the main objective of the Congress is to evaluate the results of the work of the last 5 years, in addition to honor the work developed by women in various sectors of the country. During the Congress, the work of prevention and care carried out by female social workers, volunteers in the various delegations that exist in the country, as well as the role of women who hold management positions in delegations focused mainly on young women, will be prized.
We have to reinvent ourselves to face these times, to revive ourselves, to confront everything that is threatening our achievement against all the beautiful and wonderful things that Cuban women have achieved. And as communication is my field and I cannot detach myself from it, we continue to win, as all the delegates have said, in the way we communicate in our neighborhoods. Communication is not only the media. We communicate with that we do every day. We communicate by our example.
Cuban women dedicated their speeches to the Palestinian women. Deeply moved by their courage, they demanded an end to the crimes committed by Israel against them, their children, and their rights and freedoms.
And I did not want to conclude my speech without joining as many of our delegates have done, as we did today from our commission to this international demand to stop the Israel crime in Palestine. Stop killing children, stop killing women. The solidarity of the Cuban women is with the Palestinian women, with those who are also great fighters to protect their children from death every day. We are with you, and our denunciation today is made clear from our Congress of the Federation of Cuban Women. Thank you very much.
In other regions of the world, women also take to the streets to raise their voices against worldwide oppressions. In Spain, for example, social organizations are commemorating this March 8th in the streets of Barcelona. Feminist associations and collectives organize a series of events to vindicate equality between gender and denounce the different types of violence against women. The Assembly 8 a.m. called to march from 6 p.m. local time through the gardens of Gracia and walking along Gracia Passage, passing by Ronda de Sant Pere to reach the Triumph Arch, where the mobilization will end. The Assembly also called for a walk under the slogan "From our misery we make the struggle grow," to show their rejection of femicide and gender violence.
We are here because 8 March is not only commemorated on this day but every day, and we go out to vindicate it today, and we have to shout, not to keep quiet, to say everything that happens, to talk about rape, xenophobia, about everything that happens, because we are not as advanced as we think. We usually think that we have progress, but that progress is not completely done. There are still a lot of things to change, and that's why we are here today and every day since we suffer then, we are.
Also in Italy, locals crowded the streets of Rome to speak out against gender-based violence and to commemorate the International Women's Day. Likewise, the attendees took advantage of the demonstration to express their support for the women of Gaza Strip who are suffering the violation of their rights by the Israeli occupation forces. For their part, feminist groups called for a national strike to take a stand against the government's measures regarding temporary hires.
In France, the right to abortion is enshrined in the Constitution, while in Italy we have 63% of consensus objectors, gynecologists in particular, 40.5% of anesthetics, and 32% of non-medical personnel. We do not have the freedom to have an abortion. Today we do not go to work. We went on strike. We gave up a day's work to emphasize once again that women exist in this country, that they must be heard despite what the Meloni government continues to do.
Meanwhile, in France, thousands of women demand gender equality and demonstrate against gender-based violence in the streets of Paris. In this way, feminist activists seek greater visibility and the constitutional warranty of their rights. In the meantime, the country's administration announced that on March 8th would be the date for the country to incorporate the right to abortion into the constitution. Precisely on Friday, the French president announced a plan to include the right to abortion in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, a step that would constitute a win for the women's movement in the face of advancing far right.
We are doubly satisfied today, since not only did we see this gesture in sealing the right to abortion in the Constitution, but Emmanuel Macron, in his speech, said that he was in favor of a proposal that we tabled at the beginning of the week to enshrine the right to abortion in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, which would again be a spectacular step forward at a time when in many countries in Europe, women are continuing to fight for the right to abortion.
Also in Afghanistan, small groups of women staged demonstrations to mark International Women's Day in private spaces after a crackdown by Taliban authorities forced activists off the streets. Women have been squeezed from public life, barred from traveling without a male relative, and banned from certain jobs, secondary school and university, as well as from parks, fairs and gyms. A handful of women in several provinces gathered to demand restrictions be lifted, according to activists from the Purple Saturdays group, which protests Taliban government curbs on women.
We, the members of the Purple Saturdays movement of Baja province, on the occasion of March 8, International Women's Day, asked the leader of the Taliban group be brought to court for their terrorist and deadly attacks in the last 20 years and for crimes against humanity and gender apartheid against Afghan women in the past nearly 3 years. Rights, justice, freedom.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. All the stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. The Argentine Metallurgical Workers Union carried out on Thursday a historic strike of the Acindar plant due to suspensions and threats of firing in several companies. In this context, the Secretary General of the Union of the national level, Abel Furlan, pointed out that President Milei does not consider the productive sectors of the country or the workers of the industry as a priority. He stressed that besides the temporary closing of its plants, the company recently dismissed 250 workers. The strike seeks to put a pressure on the government against the implementation of these policies that target the productive sector and the working class. Ecuador's government on Thursday extended the state of emergency for another 30 days, a measure in place since January 8th to combat organized crime. The decision had been announced days before, and this Thursday it was finally formalized through the Executive Decree 193, dated March 7th. The measure is in force in the whole country due to alleged serious internal commotion and armed conflict, including prisons. Curfew schedules also remain in force without modifications. The government ratifies that the measure seeks to promote the fight against terrorism. However, several reports of abuses of authority and human rights violations overshadow the measure. The non-governmental organization Doctors Without Borders announced on Thursday that the government of Panama forced it to suspend its humanitarian activities in the Darien jungle after denouncing an increase in the number of rapes of migrants crossing the inhospitable jungle on their way to the United States. Through a statement on social network X, the organization indicated that they were forced to suspend medical activities in the Darien by the authorities of Panama and highlighted the concern about the consequences that it could bring to the migrant population. On the other hand, the Panamanian government alleged that the non-governmental organization does not have a collaboration agreement in force with the Ministry of Health to operate in their country. It should be noted that the measure was adopted days after Doctors Without Borders denounced an increase in brutal attacks and sexual violence against migrants in the jungle. Mexico, the students of the Ayotzinapa Normal School denounced that Guerrero police killed one of their classmates and wounded another in Tixla. On the web page of the Federation of Socialist Peasant Students of Mexico, they confirmed the event with a declaration of mourning. For their part, the state police assured that they were attending a complaint about the thief of a vehicle, and upon arriving at the place known as Hotel Petlatlan, they were attacked. Meanwhile, the Human Rights Center Minerva Bello reports 2 casualties and demands the immediate arrest of the police officers. On Thursday, U.S. President Joe Biden delivered the State of the Union address amid a tense political climate at local and international levels for his administration. Among the central topics of this third State of the Union speech, Biden showed a firm stance on immigration, indicated that his administration won't demonize migrants. On the other issue he talked about is the Ukrainian crisis and referred that his nation will not back down on aid to Kyiv while reaffirming its commitment to NATO. U.S. President also addressed the Palestine crisis in the midst of mobilizations taking place outside the House of Representatives, calling for a ceasefire in this context. Biden continued his soft language policy against Israel and proposed to build a humanitarian corridor for the entry of aid to Gaza. In this sense, he assured that the solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the creation of two states.
I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day.
Moreover, in response to the appeal of his own people and the international community, Biden allegedly stated that the United States will establish a temporary pier to provide humanitarian aid to the Gazans. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Russian Defense Ministry reported on Friday that Russian air forces destroyed two bases of terrorists involved in attacks on Syrian army positions in Idlib, northwestern Syria. In this regard, Admiral Vadim Kulit, deputy head of the Center of Reconciliation of the Warring Parties in Syria, noted that on March 5th, the Air Force carried out attacks in the area of the city of Basangul in the province of Idlib. In the meantime, the official statement added that more than 20 terrorists were killed. On the other hand, the Russian military denounced that the United States-led coalition forces violated the disarmament protocols and the Syrian airspace 4 times over the Al-Tanf region with a pair of F-16 and a pair of A-10 Thunderbolt attack aircraft. Israel murders an average of 63 women daily in Gaza. With the reality of this fact in front of everyone, the Palestinian Prime Minister assured that on International Women's Day, women in his country have had to live through the darkest days in history. Mohammed Shtayyeh, acting Prime Minister, denounced that Palestinian women arrived to this March 8th, mourning their loved ones displaced, deprived of the most basic human rights, or simply did not arrive to this Friday because they were murdered. He repudiates that the tragedy occurs in view of the whole world. While celebrating women, in Palestine more than 9,000 have been murdered with impunity, and the number of displaced women has reached almost 1 million. The Gazan authorities put the number of orphans at 17,000 since October 7, 2023. Humanitarian organizations in Palestine denounced that the Israeli blockade measures aggravate the famine situation in the Gaza Strip. Palestinian rights groups accuse Israel of consistently and baselessly blocking aid operations to the Gaza Strip, even as the enclave falls further into famine. The organizations urge the international community to continue pressure on Israel to allow much-needed aid into Gaza so residents can cope with the famine situation due to the shortage of essential supplies. Regarding the worsening humanitarian crisis, the United Nations confirmed 20 deaths due to malnutrition and warned that dozens of civilians died in silence due to famine without reaching hospitals in Gaza. In this regard, several countries continue operations to send humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. In images, we see how joint air operations between Jordan, Egypt, the United States, France, the Netherlands, and Belgium launch packages with humanitarian aid, food, and medical supplies to civilians in the Gaza Strip. These packages with the aid are being distributed to the northern Gaza area, where Israel occupation forces have prevented access to the trucks with the necessary supplies for the most vulnerable population. In Chile, on Thursday, the group of lawyers for Palestine demanded an investigation before the General Controller's Office into the contract of an Israeli company, Mekorot, with a public agency, alleging that although its purpose is to receive water resources management advice, it lacks transparency in the contracting process and adequate warranties of compliance.
Today we have filed a complaint with the Controller General of the Republic in view of certain irregularities that are happening in the Biobío region. There is a contract that Biobío is making through its Biobío Development Corporation that is totally irregular. There are public resources involved that we do not know what is being done with those resources. It is a contract for water consultancy with the Israeli company Mekorot.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media as well, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for